I was locked in this house with him for 3 whole weeks.
Wow.
And it was hell. It was hell.
Grownish, smartish, British.
We are British, apparently.
Are we officially in? My days. All right, let's try this again.
No problem.
We have Camille in the building. Camille, thank you so much for coming.
No problem, Hebz. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So guys, we originally started in the DMs.
Mm-hmm. Went down.
And went down in the DMs, read it, and we're here today. And it was like God's timing. I think you've been following me for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And before we digress into the topic, can you tell people who you are and what you do?
So my name's Camille. I have a background in working with children and families, and I had a side hustle doing cleaning, and I just recently quit my job to set up my own cleaning business and also potentially deliver parenting programs and at some point in the future go into mental health.
That's
amazing.
amazing.
A bit of me.
Do you know what? Well done on like quitting your job and just going, do you know what? Let me do me, because I'm about to go on a sabbatical because I want to start venturing onto something that I have a passion for.
Okay.
And putting aside really the main thing that controls you, which is money. Like money is the main thing that dictates your journey. And luckily I'm in a position right now where I can go, let me just put pause on that, the need for work, and let's find my passion and turn that into work.
Yeah, it's scary to a certain extent because I've never ever quit a job. Like, since I've been 12, I've been working. So over 20.
Girl, who employed you at 12?
Well, I had a paper round. So like, let's start. Like, it was legit, but it was like I had a paper round, and then I went, into retail and moved up and stuff. And and I've always had a job because I've got 2 children. It's like, okay, as much as you're doing what you love, but you have to kind of do it as well. And then
there's duty behind that.
And then I was working in this job for 3 years. I won't say who for, but I was working with parents in the home, and I loved my job. I absolutely loved it. But the work environment was very toxic, and I worked very optimistic, went into it great. Turned out shit.
I shattered your dreams a little bit.
Yeah, definitely did. And then I had a little bit of a mental health blip, and then after COVID, and so I took a break. Thought, great, I have this break, go back into it and hope for the best. Went back in and nothing changed. And
same culture.
And it's that saying that you can't heal in the same place that made you sick. And I always give people the benefit of the doubt. I always have this. It's one of my one of the negatives about me, I would say, is that I always give people the benefit of the doubt.
It's not a negative, it's just a naivety in you.
It's a naivety, and always, oh no, it'll get better, and always, ignore the red flag.
Let's turn them into amber.
Just keep not that bad. 6 weeks out of 7 have been shit, but the last week was great.
And I feel you. But it's good that you've reached this point now where you're just like, do you know what? I know what I need, and I'm not afraid of it. It was
so weird. Like, I was literally on the bus and something happened. You don't know if you talk about karma or in the universe or whatever, and I was like, I'm going into work and I'm going to hand in my notice. I started work on Tuesday, and I said I'm going to hand in my notice on Thursday, and I did.
Well done.
Just like that. I was
good.
like,
and hopefully you look back and be like, do you know what? I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad I listened to that voice before the self-doubt kicked in.
Yeah, because everything was going, like, in economics wise, everything's going against me because the news was here I am,
about
like,
to get hard.
happy as Larry, and it's going, it's going to be shit. It's going to be. I was like, Camille, have I done the right thing? But something kept telling me, God was like telling me, no, Camille, you have to do this. Man. So we'll see. So far, so good.
Well, I look forward to seeing your journey, and hopefully you'll be telling me about your success as an employee and franchisees for your job. Listen,
got to try. I wanted to say I tried it and I failed, or I tried it and it didn't work, rather than.
At least you tried it.
Yeah, at 100%. Least I tried to say I tried it, and this is how I've evaluated it, and this is how I'll do it better next time.
100.
But rather than I wish.
The what if is the hardest part, because you just don't know. Even if you would have failed, at least you can say I tried it, and there's there isn't that voice in the back of your head going, God, you should have just done it, man. You should have, what if? I feel you. So I start every episode with your favorite quote. because you've given me, listen, you've been spitting quotes for days. But I've picked one of yours.
Okay.
Just in case. Do you remember the one I chose?
You said that, I think I said, I can never get it in the right order, but everyone that you're in a relationship with is a reflection of the relationship you're having with yourself.
Okay, cool.
And
what does that mean to you?
I never understood it when I first heard it from, and it was Yola Van Zandt. I watch a lot of her videos, and she said it first, and I was like, oh, like it's not landed
it's not
yet.
Resonating yet.
Yeah, and this is a good couple of years ago now, and I've been on this like sort of self-growth, self-healing, changing yourself type journey for years and years. And I was really angry with one of my friends for something that she's doing. Really angry, and it keeps going over and over and over and over in my head. And then I was washing up, because I'm always washing up and having these epiphanies in water. And I was like, Camille, you're angry at your friend for something she's done, but you was in that same position a couple of years ago and didn't make a better decision. So it's like living vicariously through your friends to a certain extent. I've like, it's like being in a relationship with a man, and like you ignore the red flags and you come out of it and you're like, I'm going to do it better. And then your friend's doing the same thing. You're like, no.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
Bro, I used to be that.
Exactly. So,
yeah.
But it also makes you question, like when I'm having these thoughts and feelings about my friends or about relationships, it's like, well, turn it around back on me. It's like, if there's one finger you're pointing at someone else, there's two pointing back at yourself.
Yeah. It's a humbling moment.
Yeah,
very
definitely.
Humbling. And there's something about wisdom that the minute it's something like you unlock a level and everything just makes sense. So I had chose a quote for this week, and it's an apology without change is just manipulation. And that's come from Ray. He's it's called M Coaching. He's like a mentor. He's really good. And to me, I took away kind of like, I guess, a reflection of my relationship with my ex. And I think today, like, obviously we're kind of unpacking a little bit about previous relationships. And I realized actually that resonated with me, because we can apologize so easily, but then if you have no intention to change and just repeat it, then is it really an apology, or are you just trying to win time or trying to like fool me over? So to me, I understood that is manipulation, because you'll come back apologetic and then I have to like be open to receiving it and accepting it, but then only for you to go and do that all over again. So to me, I felt like it was very relative to our topic that we're going to be doing today.
Okay.
So for those who don't know, I met you through Instagram, and like you've been like reacting and responding to my stories for some time now, and I put out the status on my story saying, you know, has anyone experienced domestic violence or know someone who has, who would be open to share their story. And the responses I got was actually so surreal. Like I had so many women messaging me going, I can tell my story, and I had women just unpack straight away, and I'm just like, whoa. And then them going, oh, but I'm assuming it's just anonymous, right? You're just gonna just share it for something else. And I'm just like, oh, I was hoping for someone to speak about it, but only if you feel safe enough to do so. And obviously, like, I'd like to hope my podcast is done in a tasteful manner, so you are able to unpack. But then you approach me and I'm just like, are you sure you want to talk? And you're like, yeah, I think I need to. And just hearing some of the stories, it just made me realize this is a bit way too frequent, and it's still occurring to this day. Your journey, I guess you said it was 17 years ago.
Yes. So just to ask you, did you mention lots of women approach you? Did you have any men say that they've experienced? No,
that's the issue. So okay, stats wise, each year nearly 2 million people in the UK suffer from domestic abuse. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men will suffer. So the reality is, you're sitting amongst men right now, at least one of you's going through it, but no one's talking about it, because for a man to be vulnerable, like imagine how hard it is for you as a woman to be vulnerable, and how hard it is to deal with opening up about a topic like this, let alone a man to go, do you know what, it's happening. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, there's so many layers to it. So I'm not shocked that a man didn't approach me, but I know for a fact that at least, like, I have around 4,000 people following me. There must be at least a handful of guys who are going through it, but they either don't know they're going through it, or like, because it's like the nonchalant, no, it's cool, man, she's just a bit I
think as well with men, there's the assumption that what happens to them is because of their behaviour.
Okay, interesting.
So, for example, your woman is treating you poorly because of something you've done. So let's say, for argument's sake, you've cheated, or you know, there's something along those lines. I think in society there's an assumption that what women do to men is because of what men do to women.
Okay, so it's like, what did you do to deserve it?
So that's why you're reacting. She's reacting like that because of something that's you've done too. But I think with domestic abuse and domestic violence, it's what I have realised is, in terms of the behaviour, put you next to a man, you both do the same behaviours, but you just got different genders, so it's accepted differently and treated differently, and unfortunately I also know someone very close to me that is experiencing it. And so I'm sort of reliving it at the same moment.
So another woman?
No, a guy
Wow.
who is experiencing it, and it's sort of resurfacing, and also it's a weird scenario at this moment in time in my life, where I'm on the other side of someone experiencing it, and I said, why aren't you leaving? And
but then it's never that easy.
No, it's
so
not.
I guess you created a safe environment for him to be able to even reach out and talk to you about it, and that's incredible. It shows your growth, and it shows how far you are in your journey, and I guess open you are, that maybe he felt comfortable enough to kind of go, I can relate to your situation still.
Yes and no. I think I'll be able to explore it more with you off camera, because as much as it
story.
is,
that's fine.
but I'll tell you more about it off camera. But
that's fine.
or as we go through. I'm sure I'll be able to
100%.
share parts.
So another stat I just wanted to state: 75% of domestic homicides were women, and that shows you basically how bad domestic violence can get. Generally speaking, men have high levels of homicides, but they're not domestic related. So I don't think there's many, but I know they exist.
Yeah.
And I think naturally by default, people, when they think of domestic abuse, they assumed physical. And so firstly, I'll just for the sake of education, I'd rather be useful than just exchange stories. The offenders tend to be a partner or an ex-partner, a relative, or someone who's been in their relationship, or some sort of relation to their child. So it could be maybe they've not had a relationship, but they're together, or they've been together somehow. And also the Domestic Abuse Act of 2021 outlines the following behaviours as domestic abuse: so physical or sexual abuse, violent or threatening behaviour, controlling behaviour, economic, so financial abuse, and then psychological, emotional, or other abuse. And I think people overlook everything else aside from the obvious physical stuff. So I would like to speak, because obviously you told me a bit off air, and I want to kind of go through a journey with you. So firstly, growing up in your household, what did home look like, and what did love look like to you?
Oh, thankful for the internet is the fact that you can now hear about different styles of parenting, and a lot of what's been coming up for me a lot is, what's your normal?
100%.
Because what my normal version of love and parenting looked like made it easy for me to, unfortunately, be in a relationship with someone that committed domestic violence to me. My parents are Jamaican, and how do I explain this? So in my home, I've had two children, and it's one in 2006 and one in 2011, and it's not until 2017/18, and I'd been working with children and families since 2009, and it's not until 2017/18 that I was made aware of attachment and bonding. I'd worked in all these environments, I've had my own two children, and no one had actually sat down and spoken to me about attachment style and bonding. And at the point that I found out, I was working in a mother and baby unit for women with with postnatal and prenatal mental health. And from there I was learning a bit more about parenting and mothering and what's more what we're talking a lot more about now is the mother wound and narcissistic type parenting. And going back to what's your normal, so growing up in my home, I think I had an emotionally unavailable mum. So my parents were married, then got divorced, and so I spent 99% of my time with my mum. And I think, unfortunately, my mum was very emotionally unavailable or unattuned, and there was a huge element of narcissistic mothering there, unfortunately. And so from photos and from descriptions and, you know, just going by photos, it looks like we had a kind of happy childhood. And you can have happy moments, but it's being attuned to your child's needs. And you know, I'm not trying to have a go at my mum as much as the difficulties have arisen. It's how do I put it into words? There's a level of coldness that's there, and that's just her in general, unfortunately. And so home life was, she was a single parent, so she worked a lot, so I spent a lot of time with my cousins, and that was great. I had an amazing childminder, which I think also buffered the impact of what my mum did or didn't give to me, because she was very loving. So I didn't recognise or realise until I got to like my early 30s, late 20s, that something was off. That's why I always go back to what's your normal, is because a lot of us get into relationships that are normal. They're reflective of what you have seen and witnessed yourself. And even now, I'm still recognising and being told and understanding that the behaviours that I'm receiving are not okay, but it's okay for me. That's normal. Because you've been desensitized and accustomed to it. Yeah. So just interestingly, I always think about like my parents, and I think about things that they did that I do differently in regards to how they show love and stuff. But I deeped it at some point, and I remember my friend telling me, like, he's a grown guy. We haven't spoken in some time actually, but he said that his mum just randomly like is very aggressive towards him, and she has this high expectation of him. And I'm just like, have you ever sat down and tried to understand your mum's past? Have you ever asked your mum, like, why are you like this? So your mum obviously was kind of non-emotional towards you, but then it's like, what did she witness herself to why she became the woman she is today? Because she might not even identify that her behaviour was narcissistic. She might not even 100%. A lot of narcissists don't know they're narcissists, and that's the reality that we're in. No, they don't. And I think where it's difficult with what you just said about your friend is you've got a son, if your son goes to school and your stepdaughter, I'm assuming she's stepdaughter, says, you know, my mum does this, my daddy does that, you always take into consideration and account how that child feels in that moment and want to keep that child safe, But I'm still a child, but because I'm an adult, we have to take the adult point of view, which is, well, you know, your mum went through some stuff in the past, which is why she is the way she is, and your dad went through some stuff. And so it's like, as a person that's experienced abuse, you're not allowing me to have the feelings that I have. You want me to understand from my abuser's point of view, and it's like, why? That's difficult. I think when you're that young, it's unfair. So that's what I'm saying. As from a child, you wouldn't make a child do that, but why do you make an adult do that? If I go to, like, for example, a man committed crimes against me, I don't need to understand why he's doing that. Most people wouldn't. You shouldn't be doing what you're doing. He may have a past, he may have seen it, but what his behaviour is wrong. But when it comes to women now and mothers, it's, but your mum had a hard life and your mum had. I'm not saying, and it's not about you personally. No, about excusing. But I feel like when it comes to the gender difference, that's what we do. Men are violent, men are aggressive, men are perpetrators. They're bad. women, oh yeah, but you know your mum had a troubling upbringing, and your mum.
So
had
the reason
this,
why
that,
I deep that with my both parents, like my dad, he was quite angry growing up, and I got licks for nothing, like honestly, just because it's a Wednesday.
Yeah.
But when I understood the upbringing, it's not to enable it or to tolerate it, but to make peace. And actually, I felt bad for them. For certain elements of their life, like my mum's never really got to live her life. She just became a mother. Her identity was taken over from motherhood. And I think even you, as a person that you are, and your journey you've been through, there'll be certain things and certain head spaces that you've been in as a mum where your child should have maybe had more of you. Like I've been challenged, like when I've had my weak moments, and it's like, it's not to say, well, you know, my child has to tolerate it, but sometimes we're going through things and some people don't recognize they're going through things. I think the older generation as well, and maybe I am making excuses for them, but I feel like the older generation, they don't have the, like you said, the internet is such a huge thing. Our parents are just about, tell me my password for the 20th time. I'm like, Mum, I told you your password. How do I log into this? And I'm like, Mum, just stay there. Like, so I feel like we're more privileged than they are as far as 100%. Self-reflection, recognizing our behavior, taking accountability. It's not to excuse them, but I think for me, it's to make peace for you. Do you know what I mean? Like when you realize, if you were to sit, I don't know if you sat down with your mum and understood her past.
I think when I found out about narcissistic type parenting and emotionally unavailable parents and this, that and the other, and went down that rabbit hole, I then started talking to some family members who then told me some stuff about certain people in my family and certain behaviours. So it looks like it's generational. But I think what should be added into that when you do the reflection on your parents or whoever it is just because I think there's a taboo with mothers. So it's easy to ignore your father and get rid of your father's, your dad's this, your dad's that. But when it comes, yeah, exactly. But when it comes to your mum, it's like, oh yeah, but that's your mum. It's like, well, actually, I can understand her past. I can make peace with what she's done or what she's still doing. But there has to be boundaries, and sometimes 100%. That boundaries come where what's difficult for people to understand is that sometimes that means no longer keeping that person in your life, and people aren't at that point of understanding why you may not have that person as close to you. But
it's because they hold that idea, like you said, of like the weight of a parent, and I can tell you for free, not all mothers are mothering, and not all mothers should hold the title. There are straight cruel people, and there are people who are going through it that shouldn't be parents because, you know, they don't have the capacity for it. You reach a point where whether you're a sibling or a parent or even a friend, however you want to do, it's easy to let go of friends, but where you can go, do you know what, I love you and I forgive you, but I know my limits, and I'm gonna keep you at arm's length. You know, I'll forever worry about your well-being a little bit, but I know what my lane is, because I need to protect me, and also in your case you need to protect your children, because you need to reserve your energy in order to be the best mother and to keep going. Like
progressing, I feel like I'm in this position of very much so I need to get to that next stage. There may be people that I may have to leave behind, and I have to get comfortable. I've known that for years, because that's what's thrown at you when you start unraveling all your traumas and stuff like that. But you can't just, I need to get rid of you, so see you later, bye. It takes time to learn to get comfortable with that, and I think there's going to be more for me to get better within myself and improve my behaviours and keep having those healthier behaviours. I am going to have to create a larger amount of distance than, you know, not than necessary, but than what people may think is okay. But that's
but don't worry about
okay.
Them. No. Yeah, don't worry about no one. No. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. But it's true though, like, because it's ultimately your journey. You're the one that has to sleep at night by yourself and your thoughts, and you have to be accountable for your future and your children. And it's not about the whole what if energy. It's I've acknowledged the situation. I've learned from this. Am I going to continue enabling it by ignoring it because people are telling me, you know, blood's thicker than shush, man. Like, because I've inherited you in my life doesn't mean by default you are this perfect person. I respect what you're doing. It seems like you're really, really learning yourself and trying to deepen on a point where, like, you're not just being a victim, or you're not moving. I mean, do you consider yourself a victim?
Not anymore. I think I'm very much a survivor of what I've been through, and it's an interesting word I'm going to use. Probably not the right word, and I had another word, but humbling experience, domestic violence.
Okay.
It's a very humbling experience, and I did have a better word, so apologies if that one doesn't no, it's not great for people right now.
Because I can relate to that. It's a very humbling experience when you've experienced something very toxic, and when you leave it and the strength you gain afterwards, you realise, that was very, it kind of shaped you into the incredible human being you are today. So kudos to you.
I'm trying.
So you grew up obviously with the idea of like, I guess parenthood
silent treatment.
Okay.
So I think that plays a part in it. And when you look at why or how certain women get into domestic violent relationships, and you look at the childhood that they've had, the unfortunate thing is that even if it wasn't who it was, it would have been someone else, especially at that time. Like, if it happened now because of the internet, you can be like, why is my boyfriend doing this?
You can Google it, literally.
Yeah, exactly. And it might not mean that you leave quicker, but you can identify it. 100%. It's a lot quicker to identify that this behaviour is not okay. Whereas 2005, 2006, no, like, people know. Domestic violence is wrong, but like you said in the beginning, most people focus on the violent part and why aren't you leaving? It's like, let's not go there just yet.
And there's also a narrative that, it's not that deep, or it's just like, but he's a nice guy. Everyone loves him. And it's just like, I don't know if that's enough reason to take beatings.
And also at that point in time, there still isn't a lot of marketing around domestic violence. Like, about refuge, about women's aid and women's aid, and every so often you'll hear the story in the news about someone has been murdered at the hands of their ex-partner. We need to do better and do more, but there's still a lot of shame around domestic violent relationships. 100%. And I can't remember where my thought process is gone.
Don't worry, girl, we digress all the time. but what I'll ask you is, firstly, obviously you identified later on, I guess, that you were in a domestic situation, like domestic violence situation. Prior to him, your previous relationships, when you first started dating, did you find yourself that this was something that you sort of naturally happened to you, or was it something that what you experienced of him was completely different than everything prior to that?
Completely different, and I've thankfully never experienced it ever again.
Amazing.
But a large part of domestic violence is emotional abuse.
Yes.
A massive amount of it is the emotional abuse, and that's what happened. So the first 3 months, let's say, were sort of the foundational work before the violence started.
Yeah.
And what I don't know if you've got the statistics, but I was pregnant at the time. So a lot of domestic violence starts when a woman is in a vulnerable position, which is pregnancy.
Okay.
So there are also significant statistics around domestic violence and being pregnant, and that's when it ramped up a little bit.
So just so I can understand the timeline. So how long were you together in total?
So 1 year. I left 1 month exactly before my daughter was born.
Okay, that's a very difficult time to leave. Yeah,
1 month, and the universe decided to make her be born on his actual birthday.
Oi.
Yeah.
Okay. That's part of the healing in a very weird way. It's like trying to make peace with that person and having a more positive association with him. But it's fine. So first 3 months, was it from the get set, or was he like this incredible human being that just...
I think what I'm now understanding, the term love bombing, that has become more prevalent recently, and that intensified early stages of a relationship, and
they're just gassing you with all this goodness.
And I remember being on the phone for hours with him for the first 2 or 3 weeks, and not thinking there's anything wrong with that. Someone likes you, they want to talk to you all the time. It's like, and when you think about it now, there's a song, but I can't remember the person singing. I think it was Faith Evans, but there's a song called Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. When you don't grow up with a father figure and a lot of love in your early childhood or just in childhood, it's easy. You don't realise that that's what you're doing, but I think that it's easy to gravitate towards because this person is giving you a lot of what you've never had before. If you get it from an uncle or a grandparent or your dad, then you can, hopefully that dad is there, that male figure is there to intervene and be like, actually, this is not great. That perpetrator is actually possibly scared that you've got all these men in your life. So, you know.
But not just that, but also like you're able to feel fulfilled in that fatherly figure. Yeah. That you're not seeking it elsewhere. And I think a lot of people who, when they describe the experiences growing up with unhealthy relationships, it can be in friendships as well. It's like, they're trying to make
down that
you're always trying to find a friend.
Yes.
And you're always trying to trust people and you're always trying to like pour into people because you got a lot to pour into. You got a lot to pour, but who do I pour it into?
But also it's like when you think about the pictures that people draw, mum, dad's children, if you've only got a mum there, then it's like the cookie cutter. Who's going to fit in? Is it going to be this guy's going to fit in that space? It's going to be that guy that's going to fit in that. There's always somebody, and you haven't got anything to measure it against.
And you have the inner child as well, just going, come on, this is going to be it. This is going to be it.
That you're normal. It's like, well, this guy is okay. So is he going to, he's not fitting the father figure, but in terms of that male person, is that, well, okay, well, it wasn't that one. Is it going to be another one? You've got nothing to base it against. Well, my dad always treated my mum in this way. My dad always treated me this way. So this man that's come into my life and is not doing that. You've got
no
nothing.
Standards.
Yeah, there's no standard there. So I think, the beginning was very intensified and like, I think I even had a moment where, during the, I knew it wasn't normal. I knew that it wasn't a case of, I loved him and I had to stay with him. I never got a chance to leave. The whole relationship from the whole pregnancy was about surviving.
Wow.
The whole of it. It wasn't a case of, I love him, I'm going to leave him. And, and I told people, or I didn't confide in anybody. I spent, why I couldn't leave was proximity.
Okay.
So I lived at number 20 and they lived at number 33.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't a case of, I'm just going to get on the train and go to Paddington and then I'll be back later. Yeah. There was none of that. It was such close proximity. So I was very rarely on my own. Very, very rarely on my own.
And was there because obviously we mentioned different types of abuse. Was it, what came first? Was it the controlling abuse? Was it the emotional, where you were like, all right, cool, this feels uncomfortable, but I can't, you're yet to put a finger to what it is really?
I think it was a whole combination of things. I think something not feeling right maybe came later on, but the control, this very subtle control came probably almost within that 3 months. And the paranoia from them came almost, again, it feels like all a blur, but it's such a long time ago. But it was all of those subtle emotional abuses were all there in the first.
But you just
3
ignored
months.
it.
I didn't know that it was emotional abuse. So it's not a case of ignoring it. You don't know that what's happened to you isn't normal. Yeah. Because I didn't have other relationships to base it against. I didn't see my mum in any relationships. The only relationships where I learned how to be in relationships was from the TV and media.
Yeah, and they're not necessarily the best. There's a lot of toxic stuff out there.
We look at it from privileged eyes. 2005, 2006, think about social media, what was existent back then, how we were talking to each other, our friendship circle, our family is very, very different from now. It's 100%. Right now you can say all of that, this is what abuse is. But back then, that wasn't abuse. Yeah. It was abuse, but you didn't know it was abuse. It was just my normal.
I think a lot of men and women who are in abusive relationships only identify it and really deep it towards the end, or when something just happens in their life and they go, hold up, wait, or they hear someone talk about relationship and then you're comparing notes. You're like, wait, mine doesn't line up to that. Mine's not even near that. Like,
and also acceptance. I don't know if you remember the Rotherham girls.
Yep.
They did. There was like a drama series, and I watched some of it. I could barely get through the first one because it was so dark. But grooming.
Yeah.
So you're groomed to accept what's happening and the love that you think is love, and why a lot of girls couldn't say that what was happening to them was abuse, because they didn't want to accept that the person that they thought loved them was actually abusing them. So you also, not from necessarily for myself, but why some people don't come out of relationship, because they don't want to accept that this is abusive. That the person that they've pulled into, they've given the rule, they've maybe lost friends, gained friends, or
100%.
They don't accept that actually.
Yeah.
I've done all of that, and this is what I'm getting in return.
Yeah, so, and also there's that hope of maybe things will change, maybe things will get better. And this, maybe one day he'll love me, or like maybe if I have a child of him. There's so many layers to why people stay together, and I think the most interesting thing when I spoke to some of these women in the DMs, they were like, I never ever thought it'd be me. I was like, hell no. And I watch people and I'm like, leave the guy, man. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's like, stop complaining, just leave. And it's like, you don't realise you become a little bit paralysed in the relationship. And
100%. You don't know how much you don't love yourself until you've been in a domestic violent relationship. And there is a shame on top of it. Yeah. Because I never accept that. I never accept that man doing that to me, or you're stupid, or those were some of the
and now you're that stupid
phrases.
Person.
Yeah. It's like, and also a lot of it is perpetrators. They know where to. They got to convince an audience that they're okay. Yeah. For the ones, there are those people that are just outwardly aggressive, and you know that they are violent. Yeah. And then there's people that have that persona that. Keeping Up with the Joneses, they've got that outside persona, and then you've got the home persona. So when you do say, oh, that person's a paedophile, that person's a murderer, and you say, oh my God, I never realised.
You
never guessed it.
So with your ex, was he portrayed like, was everyone cool with him, or did he have like a weird energy that your family didn't really warm to him?
I think he met them. I'm not entirely sure of what they actually thought of him, to be honest. But our relationship, like I said before, was just purely about survival. It wasn't, we had happy-go-lucky moments where I could hold on to that really nice picnic that we went on, or the date that we went on. There was none of that.
So when you say survival, can you elaborate on what that actually looked like, and when did that survival turn to escape?
Escape happened, So survival was literally just getting through each day. I think I remember, I could be getting this wrong, but I think I spent about 3 to 6 months in the same clothes.
Wow.
I wasn't allowed to take care of myself. Okay.
Was that direct, not allowed, or that's how you felt?
It was it's hard. It's really hard to explain, but my moves are constantly monitored. Constantly, someone's constantly there. They've built the picture of threat, and how do I say it? You feel too scared to leave, which is why you end up staying. Yeah. But they've also, what some women might say, but they also might make you do things you don't want to do, especially sexually, and have evidence of it. So it's sort of like it's easy to hold it against you. Yeah. So each day is literally just trying to get through each day.
Did you kind of expect this to be your life before you kind of made your escape route? Did you assume like, all right, cool, this is survival, but this is gonna be survival until?
Oh no!
Oh
no! I even back then, as weak as I was in that place, I was like, my child can't be born into this. Okay. I knew, and I didn't. There was no love. There was no going to the park. It was literally we were together all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And that
I'm guessing he wasn't working.
We was very young. So I was 18 or 19 at the time. And I think he was maybe a year or two older than me. And he was sort of not really doing much. I had a job that kind of just disappeared.
Okay.
I tried to go to college. That didn't really happen. He joined me at college because obviously I couldn't be by myself.
Oh wow. Okay.
And that didn't last very long. Literally in the same class together, or it was in college together. So it wasn't even.
Was that at any point exciting for you?
Exciting.
So at any point where you're like, yeah, I got to be with my boyfriend in college, or was it at that point very clear this is pure control? Because sometimes we're excited that we get to do something with our partner.
No.
From the get-set, you knew.
Yeah, it was all about control, because the abuse was happening all throughout. I remember, it's coming back to me now. There was something happened in a library. Now I don't want to elaborate because I can't get the details correct.
No, that's fine,
but
that's fine.
yeah, and then what happened? How I managed to escape was his mum went on holiday, and as soon as his mum went on holiday, he locked the door, and then mysteriously lost the keys, and she was on holiday for 3 weeks, right? And I was locked in his house with him for 3 whole weeks.
Wow.
And it was hell. And he was also quite abusive to his younger brother, and he also wasn't particularly very nice to animals either.
Oh wow. Okay.
And as soon as his mum put the key in the door, within half an hour he found the keys. And before I knew that he clearly hid them, we searched the house top to bottom. He was probably wearing the keys.
Yeah.
We searched the house top to bottom, and I think I can't remember if my mum tried to come over and check on me, but I didn't speak to no one for 3 weeks. Across the course of that relationship, I'd lost friends because I couldn't commit to what they were asking me to go to do.
Did anyone have any inkling that maybe something's not right?
Nobody.
They just thought you were love struck and in your own little bubble.
Yeah, I don't even know what they thought at the time. But yeah, nobody knew.
So mum came home and
then
you out.
And so his mum came home, and within half an hour he'd miraculously, oh look, I found the keys, they were hidden here. I can't remember if it was I don't think it was the same day. It's hard because it was 17 years ago.
Oh, don't worry about
16 years ago.
No, I appreciate
it's 16.
Yeah. That's fine.
But he always used to lock the door when his mum left. When his mum used to go out for whatever she was going out for, he always used to lock the door. And he got one of those houses where you open the front door and you've got a little passageway, and then you've got the living room, and then you've got a corridor, and the staircase. And I think I was on the sofa, literally sitting on on the side, and between his mum going and where he was in the house, it was like a split second decision, I need to go. And you know what brought it back to my memory was in Top Boy. Where that I can't remember her name, but they go to
going for it. Yeah,
they go to the she needs to get underwear, and she's literally
she goes to the changing room or something. And
she's split second fly, and that's what it was like, literally. And I literally flew across the road, and I was banging on the door. I was like, let me in. My sister was at home. She let me in. I said, lock the door. I ran up into the bathroom. He chased me across the road, smashed up the front door, and then the police had to come, and obviously that's when everything came out.
So that's the first time the police knew about your situation?
No, so at some point I managed to somewhere, I feel like I'm going all over the place.
Okay.
But I think I'm somewhere I managed to go home, and I was still too scared to say anything to my mum because we didn't have that open relationship.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, why didn't you tell you this person? It's like, well, we don't have that level. We don't have that relationship where we can. It's not a safe space still. So it wasn't as safe with her.
Yeah.
So I was living in an unsafe environment. My home life wasn't really safe either, to confess.
It wasn't settled at all. Yeah.
No. So, but I managed to go to the police, and I just kind of was like, describing what was happening without giving away too much information to this woman. And I have no idea what she said to me, but I left there, and I left there okay. But I was pregnant at that time. But what's coming back to me is I knew I needed to escape, and I didn't know how to escape. So this wasn't when his mum came home from holiday that I left. It was however many weeks or months afterwards. I drank Sif because I thought if I drink Sif, I'll collapse and I'll have to go to hospital.
Wow.
And when I go to hospital, then I'll be able to tell them. But that didn't work because it's disgusting. And so, but on the leading up to it, I was taking loads and loads and loads and loads of ibuprofen because I thought, I need something to happen to me.
To irritate your stomach or something.
So I collapse, I faint, I'll do whatever I can do to get out of this environment because we were always together. Always, and his mum was there, and his mum didn't intervene. His brother was significantly younger, so he couldn't do anything anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a case of, okay, how am I gonna get out of here?
You had to really strategically think about, and it's like a fight or flight moment where you just have to go for it.
Yeah, and then when I did, that was literally the fight or flight. It was. I remember it was in April. I think 30th of April. And I might be getting my dates wrong, but I literally just.
And when you left and you were done, was it done, or did you have to go through police? Did you have to?
Yeah, so I went to hospital. I said, I've been taking all these pills because this is what's been happening. And I can't remember the time frame between telling the police, but I think it was pretty soon. And you had to do it's funny because you have to do an video. I had to give video evidence or the video statement just like this. And then, but before that, I think I went and got a restraining order. So I also had to tell a solicitor. Oh, that might have been, I think I did that after my daughter was born. Yeah.
Just to touch on that, because I'm mindful of the time, but when it comes to having to tell police and tell people, because someone made a comment of if you don't tell the police, you don't report it to the police, you weren't domestically abused. Stop speaking.
Yeah, I did see that video, and
that really upset me because it takes a lot for a person to report it, and usually when it's reported, it's happened 5 to 6 times already prior to, even longer, or it's been happening for years before you can actually have the courage to do it, because there's the whole shame element. There's it can't be me. Then it's the exposure of telling people and the embarrassment behind it. So I feel like it's really sad because people don't understand. You have to now prove you're not a liar. You now have to go to court and go, I need a restraining order because this has happened, and the other person's going, wait, what you chatting about? Because they got to speak. You can get an emergency restraining order, but eventually for it to be extended, you need that person to basically line up with you somehow, and that you're not this dramatic woman who's do you know what I mean? It's a lot of energy, and for people to be so dismissive of it, they don't quite understand. It's one hell of a journey, and it's a very draining journey to go through. 100%. How has it been now that obviously has it impacted you as a mother and also building relationships with people?
It's funny because back then, because no one was talking about domestic violence that much, it was kind of easy to forget about it in a way. It's like I've been in that relationship, run out of that relationship, and now just rebuilding my life. And it's only now, as my daughter's got significantly older, and obviously we're talking about it a lot more, it's now become, I'm more aware of it, whereas I could kind of forget about it. I still obviously never forgot about it, but I never had to remember it. I never had, women weren't talking to me about it. you know, I wasn't seeing it on the TV that much. I wasn't seeing it in the media. So it was like, okay, put to one side. But now, because it's everywhere, it's sort of like resurfacing.
Yeah.
The video that you spoke about was just disgusting. I remember seeing it, and then I
she's like, if you can speak about it on socials, then you should report it. And it's just like, well, sometimes you feel safer years later to just be able to speak to a stranger than it is, because telling the police is one thing, because that comes with a lot of things afterwards, like me, you and I talking. I'm not going to go, well, prove to me. Well, maybe he didn't do that. Maybe you did something. Maybe you're lying. Maybe exaggerating. You know. And someone would go, maybe she's on a period. Like, just the most silliest thing. And then your self-doubt kicks in, and then you go, well, maybe I'm making it up. Maybe it's not that deep. Whereas when you have a conversation with people and you're just expressing, like, it's a lot more safer and controlled. Does that make sense?
I think why it can also be difficult for people to understand is, like you said at the very beginning, people only hear violence. And obviously when men hear violence, they know what, you know, how do I explain it? They know the impact. So for them, it's like, I'm not going to be violent towards you because I know what can happen. So when I hear, like, not just men, but when people hear violence, it's like, well, why didn't she leave then? Why didn't she leave? And it's like, but the grooming for you to be in those positions has already happened. Like I said, you may have been made to do things you don't want to do, and they've got evidence of it, and they threaten to show it to people. You feel scared. They're already taking your money. You've already very isolated. A lot of your friends are no longer your friends anymore, because you know, you can't tell anybody, and people, obviously, you want to develop, you're having relationships with people. That means that you need to be present in their life. If you just fall off, they're not everyone's going to wait around for you. You can't really tell your family members, because if you haven't got a safe place at home, who do you confess to? And also there's a lot around being black and approaching the police about things. At that point in time, I was just like, no, you're not getting away with what you did to me. And I just knew it was the right thing to do and go and talk to them. But it's not going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy for everyone to do that. And also your community. It's like, I'm leaving this. What am I going to? I've got to face all those questions. Why didn't you leave? And, oh, you know. And
you have to rebuild yourself again. You know, build friendships again.
100%.
Like, obviously, there's burnt bridges along the way from where your friends fell off, because they were like, you've got time for me. Then you got to be able to maybe reapproach certain people and build that again. That's a lot. And just quickly, you mentioned about community culture as well. Like, you know, in our culture, like, I say it varies. As Muslims, it varies from where you are. So, like, for example, for me, the Asian culture, whether you're Muslim or not, there's a bit more shame when it comes to reporting domestic violence. Or, like, even in Arabic culture, they'll be like, you know, they'll justify and enable certain behavior. They're like, oh, but he's a good man, like we mentioned before. So it's like certain cultures hold, like, we've all been through it kind of energy. So just run with it. It's okay. Like, or so when you hear those stories and you hear other people are going through it, you start thinking, am I stupid to have walked away? And it's just like, I guess in your case, he really never served you anything besides just literally pure control.
There was no I'm sorry. There was no, oh, you made me do this. It was one of the police officers said that they read it, and it was just like pure torture. And between me reporting him and like leaving him, he actually started doing it to somebody else.
Oh wow.
And they called me and they said, your statements between mine and this other woman's are so similar that sometimes it's like we're not, you know, we get confused sometimes. And they said, oh, you know, would you be, you know, if it goes to court and whatever, would you speak? Yeah. And I said, I probably said yes, from what I can remember. But somehow I found that girl, and then she described some of the things that he did, and it's not violence. It's not a couple of punches, a couple of slaps, kick and things like that. It's more it's very malicious and very nasty, like cutting my hair right in the middle of my scalp, like picked out a piece of wood and just whacked it against me. I remember he extremely paranoid. So he made me, I think he's at the time made me write down all the people that I slept with, which was an extremely short list because I was so sorry. I keep knocking it because I was so young. But and then I went to the doctors because he punched me so badly, or hit me with rocks, or punched me so badly that I got 2 massive black eyes. Like I've never seen my eyes so swollen all my life. And I had to go to the doctors, and obviously he came with me.
So obviously you had to find another reason to why it happened.
So I just said it's an allergic reaction to a hair dye, and he was there. But that doctor was in my trial, and I can't remember.
So what happened with him at the end?
He got away with it, as he did, because obviously they say it's not enough reports, it's not enough
because you didn't report it at the time. That's the issue, and I think that is the hardest part, is that when you finally have the courage to speak and the courage to walk away, you've left it over 6 months or something, and then it becomes it's no longer it won't
Mine
stand
was
in
happening
court.
Everything was happening up until the day I managed to get away. And then as soon as I did, that's when I went straight to police.
And even then, it still wasn't enough.
No, not. It might have been enough if it's happening now. I don't know. The law has changed a lot since then, but back then, it wasn't. It's obviously going to be. The CPS have to decide whether it's enough
evidence or not.
And then. I don't know how much time we've got left.
We're literally running out of time. But what I wanted to ask about is now you're in a space of healing, and what does healing look like to you? Where are you now, headspace, when it comes to receiving love and being open to the idea of relationships? You have another child, so I'm hoping that you've allowed yourself to explore and grow a bit in regards to relationships. Because it'll just be nice to sort of see, like, you've had your light when you left, and that was the start of the light at the end of a tunnel kind of energy. But you still had it obviously from when you left. There was still that healing to do, and facing people and everything else that's unpacking. But it's been several years. So
no one was talking about healing and mental health and how it looks for you in 2022. No one was talking about that in 2006. Nobody, especially culturally, nobody was talking about
100%,
that. So my healing journey, my proper healing journey, probably only started a couple of years ago.
Wow.
I developed PTSD after that relationship, and from what they were telling me when I got diagnosed is that diagnosis of PTSD always happens later. It's never immediately an event. It's always delayed. I can't remember the reason.
So I guess maybe something triggers it at some point.
It's like the flashbacks becoming more frequent and more like, I could be in this room and think I'm in that space. So I eventually had PTSD, and I've had lots of counselling on and off over the years. But because there's so much more information now readily available, I can really start unpacking relationships for myself. But in that period between, let's say, 2006 and even up until 2016, 17, the therapy that I was receiving and my understanding of relationships was still pretty poor. So I didn't get into another domestic violence relationship, but I got into another relationship with a guy that's actually quite a good guy, but he our relationship ended after 6 years because he became a drug addict, but he hid it for 18 months. So I had 18 months of this toxic behaviour, not knowing why. It's crazy. And then he said it, and I was like, well, that's not for me, I need to leave. So I've had the domestic violence, I've had the addiction, but the positive behind it is that there's a lot of growth within you and a lot of realisation, 100%. And you've got 2 beautiful kids, and that's something to celebrate, I think. And I'm just so frustrated we don't have enough time to really go deep into it, but I guess really the one thing I'll say to people, and I think a film that I watched it's like a documentary on BBC, I don't know if you watched it, Murdered by My Boyfriend. Someone watched it and said, oh, she looks like you should watch it. I was like, no thanks,
Murdered by My Boyfriend was a very it was a rude awakening to me, because I realised like I couldn't relate to all of it, but there was elements of it, and I was like, yeah, I can see you. And it's just like but what I'll make very clear is that some people who are, I guess, in DV relationships, the actual, I guess, offender sometimes doesn't realize what they're doing, that they're controlling or that they're paranoid or all these things. They just think that they're rightful. Like, I remember certain things that I experienced. It was, well, what did you do for me to do that? As opposed to actually that's unacceptable behavior. It was justifications to that. And I think watching that, I was like, yeah, that can't be my life. Even though I didn't like experience a fraction of it, I experienced enough of the emotional side, and a little bit physical for me to go, do you know what? I can see maybe one day, because I'm having to like woosa and not react or do anything back because I'm too, like, you don't know how they're going to react. If this is how they're reacting off a cuff.
See, I think it's difficult with they don't know that what they're doing is wrong, because I was about narcissists, you've got your public face and you've got your private face. If you don't know what you're doing is wrong, you're going to have the same behaviour all the way through.
Not really, because you know how to put on...
But that's what I mean. How do you put on a different behaviour if the behaviour that you're doing at home, why is it not acceptable outside?
Well, that's what I always say, and that's my justification to leave in my situation, is that if you can control your tongue with your manager and you can control your manners and your temper with your manager and whoever and other people... But then I've also saw them slip out of character or fall into that behavior with their sibling or with someone in the street with road rage. So I can see like that's like the inside part that's like raging to come out. But I think they need a great deal of therapy. They need a great deal of unpacking. And it's just like
self-awareness.
Self-awareness is a very real thing.
You can't, it's like the horse to water making it drink. You cannot bring someone, I think you're a narcissist, okay, let me bring you to therapy.
Oh mate, it doesn't work.
You're abusive, you need to turn around and reflect on your own behaviours and think, actually, I'm in all these, like for myself, I'm the common denominator in all my relationships, whether they're good or they're bad or they last or they don't.
You've got to take that accountability
happening, and you've got to be accountable for your actions, and you have to really unpack and be like, no, I need different, I want different, I want to attract better, I want to attract.
But the thing
different.
is, some people, women and men who have narcissistic behaviour, unfortunately at some point, if you don't self-reflect and take it, you will live your life like this. And that's what I realised in my situation, is that I had to just accept that this person has no desire to grow and reflect. We did marriage counselling, we did therapy. Then they said, you need to go into anger management. And he was like, nah, what about you though? And I'm like, bro, we're trying to make this marriage work. Like, you need to do whatever it takes to just start unpacking and talk about. Because I said, like, maybe they're severely depressed, maybe they're going through hardship, maybe it's the lack of father figure. Like, I was trying to justify why and hope that can be mended or that can be healed. But when you don't want to heal and you're going, but think about what you did, and it's constant deflection. I was like,
you know what? Cool. And also, maybe you're not supposed to be on the rest of his journey.
That's it.
Like, we think that we get into these relationships or marriages with people and we think, I want it to last forever. But maybe you were brought into his life to show him something, and at that period in time,
I'm still waiting to see what that showing is. But
that's his journey for him to work 100%, out potentially. 100%. You're not meant to be there, or maybe you're not meant to see it.
No,
it's meant to be for some, possibly, like, you know, I'm not trying to justify.
I always say, you have a son, do everything for the sake of your child. If you don't if you don't think that you need to do it for you, then you have someone that looks up to you. Let that be a reason and good enough for you to want to self-reflect and grow. But I've run out of time. What would you say, and I guess advice to people, because it's 2022, we've got access to the internet, but there's still a high level of domestic violence. So what would you say to someone who's currently going through it, or like,
it will be the hardest thing you ever do in your entire life to leave a domestic violence or domestic abusive relationship, but it will be the best decision you'll ever make in your entire life. And when you do leave, you need to work on you. You need to go into therapy. If you have children, your children need to be protected at all costs. Sometimes they need to be protected from yourself, because you may make the same mistake again because you're looking for love in all the wrong places, and another man comes along and wants, you know, I won't be like him, I'll love you, I'll protect you. And because you are in such an even more vulnerable position than when you started, it's easy to accept that, because you may leave with no home, no money, no foundations, and someone, you know, another demon comes in looking like an angel, sheep in wolf's clothing. Oh no, a wolf, do you know?
Don't worry, I always flip things. Don't worry.
So just decide if this is what you want for the rest of your life, and actually say to yourself, this will never get better than what it is right now. It's never going to get better than what it has been. You've accepted 6, 7, 8 months, 6, 7, 8 years of violence. Someone's not going to wake up tomorrow and go, you know what, I need to stop hitting you now. I've given you 1,000 slaps, but you know, I might as well stop. This is my limit. Now. This is how. This is what it's going to be for the rest of your life, and decide that you want more for your life.
Yeah, I think also realizing that children won't change it.
No,
like having kids won't suddenly better your situation, and they won't suddenly have this realization and growth. And I think any person, regardless of it's domestic violence or whatever, the only growth you can get is within yourself, and when you're ready to look in the mirror and really go, I messed up, or like I'm ashamed of my behavior, and really reaching for it. I think also for people, men and women who are going through it, it's just creating that safety net around you. Like, not everyone's, like you said, privileged enough to have a family, to have a setup. But, you know, if you have friends that don't know about your situation and you feel like they're safe hands to speak to, like reaching out to them and sort of start, I guess, building your exit, because you'll need that support, because you can't just pull up. Like, you were lucky enough to have your mum at the road, but someone else, they might have to really pattern the situation to escape safely.
100%. Because what is it? I think it's 2 in 5 or 1 in 5 women are murdered every week from domestic violence.
There we go.
And yes, you do have to have a level of escape route, even if it's just picking up a leaflet in the surgery or wherever you go. If you've got children, reach out to your children's centre.
There's a lot of support there.
There is a lot.
They're not alone.
Now.
And I think that's what a lot of women feel, and a lot of men feel, is like, I can't talk to anyone about it, and it's shame, but speak.
I think from a men point of view, I think men need to talk to other men. I think men who are going through domestic violence, other men can make them feel safe enough to be able to talk to them. It can't be a woman. It's like, a man can't make me feel comfortable enough to leave a domestic violence, because it's a man doing me to behaviour, and I'm going to go and talk to other women about it. If a man is experiencing domestic abuse or domestic violence, then men need to say, look, you know, come to me, like, you judgment-free zone.
And we're in this time where men are building that dialogue, and they're able to have that safe space, and there's more and more men who want to help their friends out and go, like, bro, we're in this together, like, I'm going through my hardship, like, we don't have to always put our best face on and act like everything's calm when we're all going through it. We're all going through something, like, whether it's domestic violence, depression, anxiety, financial struggles, everyone's got a problem. And the minute we start sharing, then we're like allowing ourselves to offload and have hope that this isn't just it for us.
Yeah, and it's not your fault. Like, if someone is doing those things to you, you haven't done something that's made someone go, oh, do you know what, I need to slap her up a little bit.
Yeah,
or
like, don't
you raise your voice, or you looked in the wrong direction, because you become very, very paranoid. They make you paranoid to the point that you're always looking down. I remember putting on lip gloss or lip balm in a car, and he said, oh, you know, are you putting that on to, you know, to get the attention of other people? And I was like, my lips are dry, you know. You stop taking care of yourself, you know, so many little things happen, but it's not your fault.
So my final advice before we wrap up, is just also, if you're not going through it yourself, but you realize like a change of behavior of your friends, your family, like certain people withdrawing from your circle, and you assume that they're just caught up in a relationship, also check into them, because like domestic abuse also can happen from a parent, like obviously we've spoken about, and I think a lot of people just go, they're busy with a new man, and it's just like, take some time out and see, because if the energy shifted and the character's changed, usually there's a reason behind it. Like if you know who this person is and they're solid, suddenly they're switching up, they're too busy, they're not very social, they're very serious, very irritable, there's usually something behind that. So just try and tap in and just keep a close eye on people.
100%. I think the love bombing needs to be a focus, because that's how it's easy to trap you. That the intensity, like, you know, I not long come out of a relationship where that happened to me, and I didn't realise there was I never experienced domestic violence ever again.
But you can pick up on the red flags.
Yeah, straight. Now I can, but yeah, I've had to go through all of that to do that. If I had this information readily available, then maybe things would be different. Maybe. I don't know.
But it's shaping you into who you are today. Yeah, so you got to just 100%. Celebrate everything that you're going through. That's it.
Leave. Never look back. Never went back.
That's good.
Because one of the worst things that happened to me was from a health professional. When I left and she come to see my daughter, she laughed and she said, oh, you know, you'll go back. You'll go back. They always go back.
Wow.
That was from a health visitor. I'll
Yeah.
never forget it. I
I'm
thought
really
I'd never
sorry.
see her again, but I did during my profession.
But that's it. But unfortunately, it's because of how frequent it happens and how quickly people keep taking each other back, because it's an environment they're used to, or they feel trapped, or they
believe that they'll stop.
they're
doing
mentally prisoned as well. Sis, thank you for joining me.
That's okay.
Honestly, I
having me.
appreciate your vulnerability. I wish that we had so much more time, because there's so much more. The stuff that you've said where we'd like to digress more and more
Yeah.
into.
I can
But-
come back. It's all right.
Yeah, listen, see how you feel. Honestly, this is like, I feel honoured that you've come here and you've chosen to do this. I know it wasn't like, it's not the most exciting topic to talk on, but I want our conversations to be useful for others and also useful for you, because hopefully, like, having this conversation is like an extra step, you know, as part of your healing and your growth. And
100%. Yeah, I've dealt with a lot of shame regarding it, and then I'm like, I don't need to.
No.
But this is why I'm doing it, because
yes,
you don't have anything to feel ashamed of.
thank you. And no pressure, but if anyone wants to reach out to you and sort of slide in your DM for some sort of guidance or some advice, can you tell them your Instagram?
Yeah,
please?
my Insta is just Camille Bogle, so it's CAMILLE BOGLE.
Excellent. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
That's all right.
Guys, you are listening and watching Growing Up British. Mama Hebz in the building. You can catch me on Instagram. I am Hebz with Z. growingupbritish.h, also on the gram, and Mama Hebz on YouTube. Please make sure to tell your friends, subscribe, and all that stuff. All right, peace.
Grownish, smartish, British.
We are British, apparently.